The following is a sponsored program paid for by First Alliance Credit Union. Welcome to Good Money Moves, featuring Jenna Taubel from First Alliance Credit Union and Andy Brownell. Here's Andy Brownell on Rochester's News Talk, 1340 KROC AM and 96.9 FM.
It's Good Money Moves on News Talk, 1340 KROC AM and 96.9 FM. I'm Andy Brownell, and I am with Jenna Taubel, AVP of Marketing with First Alliance Credit Union. Hi, Jenna.
Hi, Andy.
So last time we got together, we talked about things to consider when choosing whether to use savings or a loan for a purchase. Mm-hmm. What are we going to talk about today?
Yeah, today we are going to be talking about a topic we've covered many times before on this show, but always a good one, and that is credit scores. But more specifically, we're going to be debunking some myths about them. There's a lot of misinformation out there about credit scores. So just to level set, though, right? What is a credit score? A credit score is just an indicator, one of many indicators of your financial health. And it's really just a numerical representation of how you manage your debt. And credit scores typically range anywhere from like 300 on the very low end up to 850. And this score is what lenders use to make decisions about whether or not to extend credit to you in a variety of different ways. And it also influences the interest rate you'll pay on those debts. And as we've mentioned before on this show, it can actually affect your job opportunities sometimes, or in lots of other things too. So we'll dig into some of that later in the show. But there is just a ton of misinformation about credit scores, which if you don't have good information about credit scores, it makes it really hard to appropriately manage your credit. And you can ultimately really negatively impact your score by following some of the bad advice that's out there. So I want to spend some time today really just debunking some of these common myths that you hear about, and just to have kind of the goal to really empower our listeners to make better financial decisions and really start to cultivate healthier credit habits all around. So yeah, we're going to dig right into the truth and debunk some myths today, help everybody understand credit scores better.
Yeah, and hopefully do things in your life to improve your credit score.
Yes.
Okay. Awesome topic, of course. What are these myths about credit scores? What are they?
Yeah. So there are 5 common myths about credit scores that I want to dive into today. So myth number 1 is that checking your credit score lowers it.
I've heard that one, yes.
Yeah, it's a pretty widespread myth. And the truth of it is, though, that checking your credit score, whether through a credit monitoring service like the credit score tool that's in the First Alliance Credit Union mobile app, or even directly through like a credit bureau, this is considered a soft inquiry into your credit report, and it does not impact your score. In fact, regularly monitoring your credit score through these tools is actually a very responsible financial habit that you should do, because it allows you to stay informed about your financial standing and really detect errors or even fraudulent activity on your credit report sooner. And where this myth actually comes from is likely the fact that if you apply for multiple loans in a really short period of time, right? If you're maybe you're just looking to get the best rates or, whatever it is, but if you do that too much in a short period of time, those are hard inquiries to your credit report. And that rapid applying for credit is actually a sign of potential financial problems.
Sure. So it suggests you might be scrambling for cash.
Yeah. And potentially being denied in a lot of places, right? So that's probably where that comes from. But the reality is you should be monitoring your credit score regularly. And there are tools that you can do that do not impact your credit. So myth number 2 that I want to get into and this is a big one, and a lot of people believe this. So closing old accounts improves your credit score. That is a myth about credit scores. So many people believe that closing old or unused credit accounts is going to boost their credit score, but that is not necessarily the case. I mean, it could. Every situation is different, but in the grand scheme of things, it's closing an account is actually more likely to harm your credit score, especially if that line of credit has a long history of on-time payments, right? Closing older credit accounts can actually shorten your credit history, which accounts for 15% of your credit score with most models. So, and then additionally, closing those accounts could then increase your credit utilization ratio, which is just the amount of credit that you're using compared to your total available credit, which again potentially lowers your score.
As it was explained to me many years ago,
yes.
You want a big pipe, but to use very little of it.
Yes, balance. It's all about balance. So the third myth I want to talk about is that you only have one credit score. That is a myth. You actually have multiple credit scores, not just one. And this is because there are actually several different credit scoring models used by different lenders and different credit bureaus. With the FICO score, you hear that one used a lot. But there's also other models like the Vantage score, and there's different versions of the Vantage score and the FICO scoring models. So, and each model may use slightly different algorithms and criteria to really calculate your score, which is what results in those variations between them. So, and it's not always small variations. I mean, you could be looking at your score in a monitoring tool like Credit Karma, but then when you go to apply for a loan, your score could actually be like 50 points different in some cases. So that's where it's important to monitor that across the different credit bureaus as well.
I ran into that about a year ago applying for a loan, and I noticed my credit score was 30 some points lower than what my, whatever you call it, the monitoring was showing.
Yeah.
There you go. You answered it for me. I was going to ask you about that, but there it is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty common, and we get that question a lot. On Credit Karma it says that my score is this. Well, we don't use Credit Karma to make lending decisions, so we have to go with the version that we're using. Now, the fourth myth is that if you have a high income, it guarantees that you're going to have a high credit score. While having a high income certainly helps you better manage your finances, or it can, right? It does not have any determination on your credit score. Your income has no determination on your credit score because your credit score is based on factors such as your payment history, credit utilization, length of credit history, types and mix of credit accounts, and those new credit inquiries. So even if someone has a high income, they could actually have a low score if they've mismanaged their credit accounts or if they just have a limited credit history. And vice versa. If you have a lower moderate income, you could have a very high score because you've done a great job making on-time payments and managing that debt load, and you have a longer credit history. All of those things play into what makes up your credit score. So you can't rely on your income to say whether or not you have good credit.
I've known people with extraordinarily high incomes who, let's put it this way, live large.
Yes.
And they just have debt like you cannot believe.
Yeah, absolutely. That lifestyle creep and trying to keep up with the Joneses is real. It's real. And so the fifth myth that I want to talk through is that carrying a balance on your credit card helps your score. And this myth is particularly damaging because it can really lead people to accrue unnecessary interest charges or ultimately rack up a balance that they can't handle. because in reality, carrying a balance on your card does not improve your score. Quite the contrary, it actually can hurt your score by increasing your credit utilization ratio. And then you're potentially leading to missed payments because you're not able to pay it off in full, right? And so it's actually generally the recommended practice is to pay your credit card balance in full each month on time to maintain a healthy credit profile. So you want to, because what the credit bureaus and those algorithms are looking for is that you can rack up a balance and then you can pay it off on time.
Pay it off, sure.
Rack up the balance, pay it off, rack up the balance, pay it off. That is what they're looking for, is that kind of balancing act of being able to manage that debt appropriately. So
if you're a person who wanted to build up a credit score, let's say you didn't really have credit, you're young and you have not dealt with this before, that is the strategy you do, right? You would make modest purchases on this card every month and pay it off every month.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Put on there what you know you can afford to pay down, your gas, your groceries, right? That is a great way to start learning how to manage that credit card.
And then don't miss any payments and don't be late.
Exactly.
All right. Myths about credit scores. Debunking them with Jenna Taubel at First Alliance Credit Union. That's today's Good Money Moves. And you know what? We'll be back with more after this quick break on News Talk 1340 KROC AM and 96.9 FM.
Good Money Moves continues in moments with Andy Brownell and Jenna Taubel from First Alliance Credit Union. This is News Talk 1340 KROC AM and 96.9 FM. We're talking Good Money Moves with Andy Brownell and Jenna Taubel from First Alliance Credit Union on Rochester's News Talk 1340 KROC AM and 96.9 FM.
Welcome back. More of Good Money Moves with Jenna Taubel at First Alliance Credit Union. We're talking about credit score myths. So, Jenna, why is there so much misunderstanding about these credit scores, and how can we avoid some of the misinformation that's out there?
Yeah, I think, there's a lot of credit score myths. I mean, really just due to the combination of it's easy to spread misinformation, and there's just a large misunderstanding of financial matters in general across ages, demographics, you name it. Like it can be really complex to understand credit scoring models and the financial industry in general. So that just kind of contributes to a lot of confusion and misinformation, which is why we have this podcast, to try to educate people more so that they don't have misinformation and misunderstanding. But I think, believing this false information about credit scores really leads people to make decisions that actually harm their financial well-being. So, for instance, someone who believes that checking their credit score is going to lower it is going to avoid monitoring their score altogether. And then they could potentially miss errors or even fraudulent activity that's going on their credit report that ultimately damages their score. So, and then similarly, someone who wrongly believes that closing an old account is going to improve their score, they're unknowingly lowering it because they're reducing that credit history length like we talked about before the break. And so it's just so important that people really understand at least the basics of how credit scores are calculated. And I think the best way that people can really avoid falling victim to some of these credit score myths is, one, educate yourself, right? If you're listening to this podcast, you're already doing this. So take time to really learn about how credit scores are calculated and what factors really influence them. And you can look to reputable sources like the three credit bureaus, Experian, Equifax, TransUnion, reputable financial institutions like First Alliance Credit Union, or even government organization websites like the Federal Trade Commission's website would be able to provide you accurate information about credit scores and how that can affect you. Unfortunately, you can't always trust your friends and families to know the information and tell you accurately. They're certainly probably not trying to mislead you, but it doesn't mean that they actually know themselves.
Unless your friend is Jenna Taubel.
Right. And we're all friends now because you're listening to me. And
Absolutely.
the other thing I think is really important for people to do is take that time to regularly monitor your credit, right? Don't be afraid to check your credit score and review your credit report regularly. Right. You get one free credit report each year from each of the different reporting agencies. Don't go out, get it. If you don't have access to a free credit score tool in your financial institutions app like we do at First Alliance, there's more public ones out there that you can certainly access to keep track of that. Because monitoring your credit is really, really going to help you detect any errors or fraudulent activity early on so that you can take steps to address it so that you don't go to apply for a loan that you really need
Yep.
and then you're denied, or you end up with a much higher interest rate because you didn't understand what was going on with your credit score beforehand.
I know someone that just happened to them. I don't know, not 6 months ago. They
Yeah.
went to obtain a loan, and lo and behold, somebody had put in there mistakenly that they had not paid off an old debt, which they had, and it had been there for quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
They had just
Yeah.
never checked it, and they got dinged on the interest rate on
Yeah.
the loan. I think it was a full point above what they should have been paying.
Exactly. And I mean, at the end of the day, that comes straight out of your wallet, that extra
Yeah,
percentage point on interest, like it adds up. So it's
and
important.
and it was over like $100. That's what it was, and it
Yeah.
had just been there for a while.
Yeah, it happens all the time. It happens all the time. Or sometimes if you have a similar name to someone else in your family and you ever lived at the same address, sometimes
Oh yeah,
their stuff can end up on yours just because of miskeying or errors that happen between organizations and the credit bureaus and whatever. I mean, humans are involved in that process, so mistakes do happen. You do
and
have
you're
to
talking
check it.
about billions of pieces of data here too.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So, and to that point, though, I think it's really, if we're talking about a situation where you do find your score isn't maybe where you want it to be for whatever reason, I think avoiding those quick fix opportunities that can be kind of marketed, right? You want to be really cautious of companies or services that promise to improve your credit score quickly or easily, because improving your score, it's typically going to require time, like 6 months minimum, to start seeing some improvement, because you have to show improved responsible financial habits over a period of time in order for that to start to reflect. So sometimes you might have to seek out some professional assistance, but make sure that it's coming from reputable sources and not somewhere that's just trying to maybe scam you, tip and
Sure,
prey on your situation, because that does happen. It's out there. You have to be careful. Um, and lastly, I think the biggest thing to help people kind of overcome some of this misinformation and be a little bit more informed about their own personal finances is really to just maintain healthy financial habits all around, right? Really focus on building and maintaining those healthy habits, making those good money moves like paying bills on time, keeping your credit card balances low, and really only apply for credit when you absolutely need to. These are the types of habits that are going to really have a positive long-term impact on your credit score and your financial health overall. Um, and really, I think just by understanding the truth behind some of these common credit score myths that we've talked about and being really proactive in taking steps to manage your credit responsibly, you can really better protect your financial well-being overall, make some really much more informed decisions about how to use your credit, and ultimately use that information to your advantage, right? That's what this is all about,
sure.
making smart financial choices that are going to set you up for success long term.
Making good money moves is what we're talking about.
Exactly.
Specifically this week, credit scores, myths about them with Jenna Taubel, First Alliance Credit Union. We'll be back after a quick break on News Talk 1340, KROC AM and 96.9 FM.
Good Money Moves continues in moments with Andy Brownell and Jenna Taubel from First Alliance Credit Union. This is News Talk 1340, KROC AM and 96.9 FM. We're talking good money moves with Andy Brownell and Jenna Taubel from First Alliance Credit Union on Rochester's News Talk 1340 KROC AM and 96.9 FM.
We are back with Good Money Moves. I'm Andy Brownell along with Jenna Taubel with First Alliance Credit Union. And the topic this week is credit scores. Myths about credit scores. I guess we've already covered the myths. So what about facts? the opposite of myth, a fact. What does go into credit score, and how do you actually manage it responsibly?
Yeah, great question. Building and maintaining a good credit score, it does come down to just responsible debt and money management. So we've kind of talked at a really high level about some of this. So I think this is a great question to kind of dive into what some of this actually means. So making timely payments is so important. This is probably the biggest factor in your credit score, is paying your bills on time every single time. Late payments significantly impact your credit score. So it can be really helpful if you set up reminders for yourself about, a few days before your payments actually due, or even setting up automatic payments is going to ensure that you never miss a due date. And if for some reason when you get paid isn't lining up well with when your bills are due, you can actually call your different lenders and billing places, wherever that money is being asked to go to, and say, hey, can I change my due date? It's really not working out for me when I get paid, here, but my bill is due here. They may not give it to you, but you can request it. And a lot of places are willing to work with you because they want on-time payments, right? That's the goal for everybody. So something to keep in mind. The other thing that's really important is, we talked about this already, but that credit utilization, you want to aim to keep your credit card balances low relative to your credit card limits. And this is because high credit utilization can really indicate financial strain, and it can lower your credit score. If your credit limit is $5,000 and you've got $4,500 on that line, that's going to show that's not a realistic amount of money to pay off in one go. So that's starting to indicate there's some financial strain there, right? So
what if you do that occasionally to make a large purchase and pay it off immediately? Does that ding you?
It would depend if you paid it on time.
Okay, well, I was assuming I'm paying it on time.
Yes, yeah. It shouldn't. No, if you're paying it off within that billing cycle, it is not likely to affect your score.
Whew,
ultimately,
I just bought a fridge.
Yeah, ultimately, the goal is to really just keep your overall utilization across your credit lines below 30% to really maintain that healthy score. So if you're making that quick one-time payment because that's how you need to make it, and then you pay it down right away, you're not going to see any true effect on your score overall. The other important thing to keep in mind is the diversity of the accounts that you have. So having a mix of different types of credit accounts is really important. So if you've got maybe one or two credit cards, an auto loan, a mortgage, right? That mix of different types of loans and lengths of loans is going to help demonstrate credit responsibility as well. However, you should, even though you do want that mix, you should only open new accounts when it's absolutely necessary for you to do so. And really, like we mentioned earlier in the show, you want to avoid applying for multiple credit cards or multiple loans in a really short period of time, because those are those hard pulls on your credit that can signal that there's maybe something going on that is concerning. So it's that rapid succession of loan applications that could temporarily lower your score a little bit.
Okay.
And then you also, again, this is just so important, so I'm going to say it again, monitor your credit regularly. You need to stay informed about your credit score and your credit report and monitor them. I mentioned earlier that you can get a free copy of your credit report from each of the reporting agencies every year, and you can get that at annualcreditreport.com. Again, use some of the free credit monitoring tools that are available. A lot of financial institutions offer that. First Alliance does through our app, but there's also reputable third-party sites you can use as well. But really, it comes down to managing your debt responsibly, right? Pay down existing debt and avoid taking on more than you can comfortably afford to repay. And that comes down to really maintaining a lower debt to income ratio, which just demonstrates, again, financial responsibility, which impacts your credit score. So another thing that I think a lot of people don't think about, especially if they're new to credit, or maybe they've had some damaged credit and are trying to rebuild it in a responsible manner. Look at things like secured credit cards or credit builder loans. We've talked about those before on this show too. Those are great tools to help establish a positive credit history without as much risk as some other types of credit and lending. So these tools are there to help really demonstrate that you have and can manage responsible credit behavior, and they help you kind of gradually build up your credit score over time by showing a positive payment history. But really overall, I would say that if you adopt, these strategies and really commit to managing your credit responsibly, you can improve and maintain a healthy credit score. So just remember that building good credit does take time and patience, but the long-term financial benefits are really worth it. And again, if you do have a lower score and you're not really sure how to rebuild it or build it up, don't be afraid to reach out to professionals like the team at First Alliance to help you come up with a plan that you can afford and is going to help you rebuild that credit.
All right, Jenna, great information. And of course, I know on this topic, there's tons of stuff out there. Maybe you could tell us how we can learn more. We have a wish to do that.
Absolutely. I always encourage our listeners to visit our website, firstalliancecu.com. You can subscribe to our blog. We release new financial tips and advice every week. You can listen to past episodes of this show at firstalliancecu.com/podcast or on krocnews.com. You can also subscribe to Good Money Moves on Apple, Google, and Spotify podcasts. And if you love our show, please leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. If you have a financial topic or a question that you would like covered on Good Money Moves, send me an email at marketing@firstallianceu.com. I'd love to hear from you. And of course, I strongly encourage you to reach out to our team at First Alliance Credit Union. They are here to help you start making good money moves today.
That's First Alliance Credit Union, federally insured by NCUA and an equal housing lender. Jenna, I look forward to next week when we can talk more about making good money moves.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you very much. Good Money Moves on News Talk 1340, KROC AM and 96.9 FM.